Today we're going to run through adding an entire oil cooler system to Pat's TI here. I may have coaxed him into doing this a little bit. The real reason we are doing this is because the oil coolers from the aftermarket world have kind of dried up. BMW inventory seems to have dried up. So we talked to our partners at CSF and have gotten them on board to work on an oil cooler system that is really the same as the factory Euro oil cooler system that's pretty popular on these things. So we actually have one here, the prototype, that I haven't even opened yet, that Pat's been hiding behind his back. So we're gonna pop this baby open, see what we got, see how it looks, and see if it matches all the factory fit and finish. Looking good. The plan for this is to have this match all of the factory installation of the E36 Euro coolers, because there's a lot of them out there, and well, people really need an oil cooler solution for some of their cars. Quite honestly, I'm not sure Pat's car actually needs an oil cooler because it's just an M50, but like I said, I kind of coaxed him into doing this for the whole test fit process. However, if you have a higher horsepower application, endurance racing, or really aggressively tracking your car, Pat is going to put a different engine in this thing that has got a little more power. So this will be a benefit at some point.
All right, we got our cooler talking stick. So as Phil mentioned, he did kind of talk me into this. My car may not really need an oil cooler, but there might be some plans for growth. Who knows? There might be an S52 or an S54 in its future. Maybe a V8. I don't know. But we're going to test fit this, make sure it works, make sure the fitment's the same as the Euro OEM oil coolers. Along with it, we've got all sorts of other stuff, which we do sell on BimmerWorld's website to install this in your car.
Yeah, a number of different components needed. The big thing, the oil filter housing. This is an S54 oil filter housing. Then the lines, all the brackets and whatnot to get this baby installed. Of course, Pat was due for an oil change anyway, so hitting it with a little refresh with some redline fluids as you're going to the track in like just a couple weeks. Yeah. So he's gonna get to test this thing out in just a couple weeks as well. So thrilled to be able to test fit this thing and make sure that this works so that we can have an oil cooler solution, again, a complete oil cooler package, again, for these E36s. So Pat's already got the oil drained, bumper off, thankfully. So we're gonna hop in and see how this thing goes on. Pat, what kind of radiator you got in this thing?
So I have a CSF OE Plus in this car, which has served me very well for track use and for when this car was lifted and all sorts of other stuff I've done with this car.
Pat's been through various phases with this TI, and it sounds like his phases are not done, as apparently he's considering a V8. His drift car is over there actually working on, he just got the cage painted in that thing. He's been, Pat's got too many projects.
Scope creep is my friend.
But anyways, on the bottom of the CSF OE Plus cooler and also their aluminum cooler, there are these little loop brackets, and this little bracket sets in right there.
Sweet.
So they hang in there. You have a little slot that goes into the bracket on the other side, and then it bolts in right here. And let's bolt that baby in. You got a 10?
Yeah.
Tighten that thing down.
School me.
So a couple of set screws here just to lock this thing down. Everything looks pretty good. I think we could change just this.
Yeah, change the geometry of that bracket.
Up a hair, or should we move?
I'd move that one up.
Move this down, like, well, actually I think I would move this down because that is right in line with that bracket there.
Okay.
And then I would move this tab up. You got any calipers? I got some at my desk.
Ha!
So super close, just a little bit crooked, which means we're gonna adjust how this bracket is and try to move it down a little bit so that it actually is parallel with the radiator. Next step, bring it down, get the alternator and oil filter housing off. Brandon trying to get his E30 ready for an SCCA hill climb coming up. Pretty pumped to see how that goes. He's been vinyl wrapping it. He's kind of refreshing all the things. It's gonna be pretty tight. You're a 10, Pat.
Thanks, buddy. I have not yet mounted my fire nozzle tabs, so my nozzles are just zip tied to things, including my mouth.
I know how that goes. But I'm proud of you for having a fire system in your car.
Thanks, buddy.
You got a fire system. You just got MCS on this thing too. Pat's about to go to the track in 24 hard.
It's looking pretty serious. Also, there's a strong possibility that at any moment in time, this hood could fall on our heads. So.
Well, at least it's white, yeah.
Watch your noggins. All right, belt is off.
You need a 15?
17 for the front. I have the 17. I want to count the on-brand BimmerWorld things in my engine bay.
All right, on brand. We got BimmerWorld boot, Lifeline fire system, MCS, Optima battery bracket as well, which I feel like is not made for the 318 Ti, but Patrick made it work for his 318 Ti. Oh, BimmerWorld coolant hoses. I'm an idiot.
Small.
I'm going to assume there's an epic tune somewhere back in here.
There is. Got the world's longest bolts. Pro tip, if you have a tensioner that's putting tension against your offset pulley, pop the tension off, rotate your pulley, and then you can just get the rest out by hand instead of sitting it with a ratchet for an hour.
Look at Pat.
Let's see if this has enough cable to pull off or if we're going to have to actually remove it.
I bet you got to remove it.
Usually this is the other way around and I'm just watching Phil do things.
I like this.
Yeah.
Before you pop the housing off, pop the cap off, the cover off to let it drain a little bit. And then we need a pan of some sort.
So there's a small pan over there that has my brake fluid in it. Might be worth a wipe down.
I'll wipe that thing out, yeah.
Ooh. Still made a mess. All right, drain down. Sweet oily.
Pat, you got that copper block?
Yeah, dude. Yeah, I built this motor like 5 years ago, and my buddy had some spray paint left over from when he was going to build an LS motor. I think he was going to use it on his valve covers. I'm like, oh, dude, I'll paint my block that color. Like, all of 3 people have ever seen the color of my block.
Not a thermostat in that system. There's a thermostat right here in the back of these, which we actually do a diverter valve as well for cars that are 100% track focused. The one caveat with the diverter valve is that it gives full flow to the oil cooler at all times, which if you're in a cold climate or if you are street driving your car, your oil may not get up to temp. So Patrick is going to leave the thermostat in this filter housing and not do the diverter valve because he says he's not disciplined enough to let his car warm up. So good for him for recognizing that.
This is correct. Not disciplined enough for a lot of things.
The big difference with the two housings are these ports right here. This oil filter housing from the S54 allows those cooler lines to come out and then go to the oil cooler. There is one other piece that is needed, which is a banjo fitting that's because this port is a little bit smaller. This is an M12 port on the back of this for Vanos feed versus the stock oil filter housing is a 14 millimeter. So we have this nifty little bolt that is M14 where it goes around the Vanos feed banjo fitting, but next down to an M12 and goes right in to make this a little bit simpler bolt-on installation. So as mentioned, the real big difference is these ports don't exist on this factory US one, but we got this on the S54 joint.
Thank you. Righty-tighty, not lefty-loosey. Alternator of alts.
Alternate some things.
Yeah, buddy.
I think you're okay.
Okay. And don't forget to plug in your oil pressure sender, dummy light. Just be like, hey, you dummy. You ain't got no oil pressures.
The alternator cooling duct from the factory, from the US cars, gets a little bit in the way of the oil cooler line, so you gotta trim it and make a little bit of clearance.
All about clearance here, Clarence. I would love for somebody to be like, oh yeah, he put the belt on wrong. Once I find the hex on this tensioner.
Look at that, all back together.
Back together. Let's drop this baby in.
Did you put the O-rings on?
Yep.
You got another O-ring?
No, Pat, I didn't forget an O-ring. All right, so we're a little bit moment of truth because we probably should have test fit this into the oil cooler first, but now we've got everything done. This is kind of the last little bit of the piece of the puzzle.
It's all right though, it's just my car.
That's right. Yeah. Pat will take care of it, but it doesn't matter because CSF is going to have gotten this right anyways. Well, that fits. That's awesome. I think next piece is to fill it with oil and make sure that we don't have any leaks from this junction, just to make sure everything's all good, and the other junction up top.
And my Vanos line.
And your Vanos line. Some people do like to do like an AN line conversion or whatnot on these things. I like using the factory stock lines, and since there's plenty of them available, it's a solution that's going to be around for quite a while. And also some other people will do other coolers mounted elsewhere in front of the radiator, blocking the radiator. This is just a clean solution. I don't mind having this thing right here. There's still plenty of ground clearance, no issue. It's in really good airflow, gets a ton of air. Obviously BMW thought this was a good move, and they thought it was a good move on various iterations of cars actually. So this is really where I would want to have that cooler. So that's also why it's important that we now have this replacement option. Yeah, so I assume, do you overfill this thing a little bit?
Generally.
Of course.
So
Usually 7.5.
So we'll probably throw 8 in here, which you've got 8 to account for the extra fluid for the lines and the cooler. I think I remember how to do this. Pat has a sequence for firing his car up. Anti-theft device, maybe, if you will.
So the key just goes in.
Okay.
The switches.
You got 2 switches?
Yep. There's a button. Or take it out of gear. Yeah.
Awesome.
Like, why was that starting so rough? He started it in gear.
Give it just a little bit of rev. I think you're good.
Sweet. Flip the switches the opposite way.
Well, I think that wraps up this oil cooler install, which thrilled to now have a solution to replace that Euro oil cooler that is so hard to track down. So thanks to CSF for coming up with this bad boy so that we can have a solution. And thanks to Pat for allowing us to do some things and let me convince him to do this on his car.
Now I've got a solution.
So now Pat has a solution, and especially as he is going to go ahead and increase the power in this thing, which I have a feeling is going to happen sooner than later. He's going to want to have this cooler on here, so now he's set to help keep his engine temps down, and looking forward to seeing Pat with this thing on track with some cooler oil temps. Thanks to CSF.
Ready to go?
Should be an awesome race weekend. We are ready to kill it this year.
It's good.
It's going to be a wild ride.